America's high-priced energy future. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
Good evening. I'm John Jessup. Gas prices have been rising steadily, and the trend may continue under President Biden's energy plan. Some experts predict soaring gas prices and sky-high power bills.
But some say what's more concerning than rising costs, the president's plan could make the United States more dependent on China. Jennifer Wishon has the details.
You know, if there's one thing that makes Americans sit up and take notice, it's when gas prices and energy costs go up. Critics of President Biden's plan to remake America's energy portfolio say open your wallets and get ready to pay even more. This aggressive energy policy targets fossil fuels with the goal of making America 100% carbon pollution free over the next 15 years. It includes plans for more windmills, billions to build new energy efficient housing, and a national network of charging stations to encourage more Americans to buy electric vehicles.
We're going to reduce electric consumption and save hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in energy costs in the process.
But his critics don't buy it.
What the Biden plan would do would actually remake the entire United States in the image of California or Europe. And for those that don't live in those areas, well, here's what it looks like. In California, thanks to the renewable energy mandates and other regulations that are in place, Californians often pay up to twice as much to heat their homes, to cool their homes, and to fill up their vehicles. And we see this playing out across Europe as well.
Add to that cities like San Francisco, Denver, and New York proposing or passing measures banning the use of fossil fuel in new homes and buildings. In response, a number of states are outlawing bans over fear they would drive up energy bills, require expensive appliance conversions, and leave Americans without any alternative during major outages, like we saw in Texas last winter. While seen as an energy savior, electric vehicles remain more expensive than their gas-drinking cousins and have been slow to take off in the U.S.
The future of the auto industry is electric. There's no turning back.
Along with more charging stations, Biden wants taxpayers to spend $174 billion on incentives for people to buy electric, like Ford's new F-150 Lightning.
This sucker's quick.
But these landmark proposals could make America even more dependent on China. In 2019, the communist regime provided the U.S. with 80% of its rare earth imports, elements needed to manufacture batteries, wind turbines, and solar panels. In fact, of the 35 minerals deemed critical by the Departments of Defense and Interior, China is the top global supplier for 23.
Of course, we have a regulatory structure that makes it very difficult sometimes for companies to actually access those materials. That is a very real concern, and political leaders in both parties should be working to ensure that we can access those minerals that we have been blessed with.
In testimony to Congress, Simon Moores with Benchmark Mineral Intelligence likened global battery supply to an arms race. What Western economies are only beginning to recognize, he tweets, is that in the electric vehicle and battery supply chain, they are the developing nation and China is the developed nation. Today, China boasts 107 battery factories with 53 actively producing. The U.S. has 9. And just 3 are active. Biden has reversed many of President Trump's energy decisions, like canceling the Keystone Pipeline, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, and most recently, tried suspending oil leases in Alaska's Arctic refuge, something Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan called a naked political move by the Biden administration to pay off its extreme environmental allies. Now Biden must follow Trump's lead in trying to strengthen energy supply chains here at home.
We got to take over the world market. That's what this is about, being the best in the world and be exporting.
He's directed the Energy Department to light a fire on battery research, manufacturing, and processing.
This is going to include new rules to ensure that companies that develop new products based on federal R&D funding manufacture those products in the U.S. So what is invented in America can be made in America by America's workers.
But as the president works to boost new energy sources, many Americans are focused on sustaining what they use today, an issue amplified when the Colonial Pipeline hack left 5 southern states with empty gas stations and long lines. A poll by the Convention of States and Trafalgar Group finds 80% of Republicans, 45% of Democrats, and 57% of independent voters say pipelines are an important part of American infrastructure. And the Pew Research Center finds nearly 2/3 of adults prefer a mix of energy sources that includes oil, natural gas, and renewables. Transforming the way Americans think about, use, and interact with energy sources is one of the many heavy lifts Biden is attempting during his first year.
This is a case where conscience and convenience cross paths, where dealing with this existential threat to the planet and increasing our economic growth and prosperity are one and the same.
But he faces many hurdles and critics who predict his plans will hit homeowners and businesses where it hurts, in their pockets. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Thank you, Jennifer. Well, from self-driving cars to robotic caretakers, artificially intelligent ways of living is the stuff of sci-fi movies and what they're made of, and it could make its way into your life soon.
The question is, though, at what cost? Eric Phillips looks at the rewards and the risks of artificial intelligence.
From self-driving cars to robot companions to warfighters, artificial intelligence is taking a prominent role across all industries. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, experts are concerned about losing the human touch. Self-driving vehicles are no longer futuristic, they're the here and now. But could this form of transportation, powered by artificial intelligence, overtake good old-fashioned driving?
I do think that the consumer relishes in humanity and in the rush of driving.
Gerson Moreno-Riano is the Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at Regent University, which has launched what's called Project Quantum, with a heavy emphasis on the ethics of AI.
Technology is very, very important. It's very useful, obviously, but ultimately is what we think about God, or a society or a culture thinks about God, and what a culture or society thinks about human beings and the nature of humanity that will drive how technologies are going to be used.
Moreno-Riano says the biggest danger is the possibility of humans getting lost as technology grows.
Families can acquire an AI robot, for example, an entity, place it in a nursing home, and rather than visiting their parents or family members there, they just place a robot. They can speak and learn and communicate with you, right? There are also AI applications that can perform funerals and religious rites. So you don't have to have an actual minister doing it, right? So it eliminates the need for humanity in some of these areas where we think humanity is most needed.
For centuries, science and industry have worked together to streamline life's daily chores and processes. Moreno-Riano worries this latest chapter could turn humans into servants of these machines or the people who create them.
The dilemma is that most scientists and engineers that speak about this are not thinking about it.
Sounds like you're saying we have to be very careful in this process not to create Frankenstein.
Absolutely. Or to have somebody else create it for us and we just sit back and watch.
This debate also stretches into the military realm, where AI is becoming a go-to solution for deciding when and where to strike.
It's simple to just have a machine, for example, determine targets of opportunity, right? But what about the human element involved here on the other side of the fence?
It was a key topic of conversation at this virtual military warfare conference sponsored by the National Defense Industrial Association.
I think at some point, it's going to be really hard to keep man in the loop. When you have autonomous platforms, artificial intelligence, machine speed combat, you might not be able to rein that in and ensure that a human in the loop prevents that escalation.
Add to that pressure on the U.S. to keep up with China and other nations moving full speed ahead with AI in combat.
Senior leadership is listening, and they understand that we are stepping into an environment that is just new to us, but we have to do something to get better at it.
Moreno-Riano insists, no matter what segment of life, humans who feel, reason, have compassion and fear God must remain in control.
If we can't do that, then I think the AI role should be limited, right? So that human beings are at the centerpiece, the focal point of key decisions, not machines.
Morena Rayano says Christians need to pray for wisdom in this area and that the Lord would raise up leaders who are equipped to properly handle this fast-moving technology. He says Regent wants to help turn out those leaders. In Washington, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Up next, a billionaire plans to block out the sun. It's supposed to fight climate change, but will it create something worse? Using dust to block some of the sun's rays. That is what scientists are planning to do in an effort to stop climate change.
While some say it's brilliant, others warn it's a bad idea. CBN's Dale Hurd looks into whether the potential danger is worth it.
The idea is to dump calcium carbonate, basically chalk dust, high into the stratosphere, to block some of the sun's rays with the hope of stopping the climate from warming. It's called stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI. The media likes to say it's Bill Gates' idea, but Gates is only one of many people funding the research, and it isn't his idea, it's Harvard's. The test launch for the project next month in Sweden was canceled after people complained. But there's likely to be a test in the future, because some scientists think this could work, while others say it's a very bad idea. This video from a German science foundation shows how it could all go terribly wrong.
It is unlikely that cooling of the planet could be achieved in a uniform way. SAI would therefore produce regional winners and losers. The total global rainfall would be less. In Asia, SAI could upset the complex system governing the monsoon, on which the water and food supply of 2 billion people depends.
It could also lead to droughts in Africa and flooding in Latin America. Experts admit they aren't sure what would happen if the sun was dimmed, but we know that when it's happened because of natural events, the result was not good. The year 1816 in the United States was called the Year Without Summer, or 1800, and froze to death. Scientists now believe it was a volcanic winter created by a huge eruption in the South Pacific. As volcanic ash circled the globe, a strange fog began to appear in the eastern United States, and the month of June suddenly saw freezing winter-like temperatures that wiped out crops and livestock and led to famine. Could the same thing happen from stratospheric aerosol injection? Jens Olof Pepke Petersen, senior scientist at Denmark's National Space Institute, doesn't think so.
The advantage is that aerosols wouldn't stay in the atmosphere for a long time, so if it turns out it's a bad idea, it would be easy to stop the experiment again.
But he also doesn't think manipulating the climate is either good or necessary. Scientists know the Earth has warmed 1 degree since 1900, but admit they don't know the normal Earth temperature, or if we are simply rebounding from a cold period 200 years ago called Little Ice Age. And while the Earth is warming, Petersen says humans and plants both do better in warmer weather than in colder weather.
And there's still more people dying from cold weather than from warm weather. The Earth has become greener, so trees are growing better than they used to.
In his new book, Unsettled, theoretical physicist Dr. Steve Koonin, former Undersecretary for Science in the Obama administration, says the weather data itself shows there is no climate emergency.
Heat waves in the U.S. are now no more common than they were in 1900. No global trends in drought or in floods. Greenland's ice sheet isn't melting any more rapidly now than it was 80 years ago. That there's no long-term trend in hurricanes over the last 100 years. You wouldn't know that, of course, if you just watched the media.
So Koonin says we don't need to go to the trouble of spreading dust through the stratosphere.
It's got a lot of downsides. Right? The most important one is once you start doing it, you can't stop. The particles settle out over a couple of years, and so you got to keep putting them up there. We should not think about deploying it unless something really bad happens with the climate.
And Koonin says the good news is that a lot of the bad news you've been reading about a climate emergency is wrong. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Water made from thin air. How groundbreaking technology is creating streams in the desert. When Faith Nation returns.
water from air. It sounds like magic, but it's actually cutting-edge technology that's solving a centuries-old problem in the Middle East.
Now the Israeli company behind this game-changing innovation is sharing it with its neighbors. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell shows how this technology is turning old foes into friends.
Abu Dhabi is a modern jewel in the Middle East and capital of the United Arab Emirates. Located on the Persian Gulf, you might think it has plenty of water, but there's a problem.
I'm not talking just about the ocean that you see outside. I'm talking about the groundwater. It's all very, very salty and undrinkable.
Last year, the UAE became the first Arab state in more than 25 years to make peace with Israel when it signed on to the Abraham Accords. That opened the door for WaterGen.
The second I heard and saw that the Abraham Accords were signed, I dropped everything I was dealing with and went directly to the UAE in order to strengthen the accords.
Dr. Michael Mirilashvili is owner and president of WaterGen, which makes water out of air. Now that technology is helping make friends out of former enemies.
We started here almost 6 months ago, and today our machines installed all over Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates, is very, very similar to Israel because it's a relatively young country that is located in the middle of the desert.
Now, WaterGen and the Emirati company Al Dahra Group have signed a landmark agreement for a water research program.
We opened a water research institute in the UAE, which is a sub-institute from Tel Aviv University in Israel, named after my father, Moshe Mirilashvili. It helps us at WaterGen to produce a formula for the best premium water in the world, which will be the tastiest, the cleanest, and the healthiest in the world.
Ben Gurion University of the Negev is also involved. President Daniel Chamovich says the goal is to combine research on water and agriculture.
What we're doing with WaterGen is bringing these two institutes together such that with water purified through WaterGen from the air can then be used to funnel into agricultural systems to provide horticulture in desert urban settings.
Another major announcement came with laying the cornerstone for a WaterGen production facility in the UAE. It will provide products for the UAE, other Gulf states, and Africa. While 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, only half of 1% is fresh water. More than 2 billion people don't have access to safe drinking water. That's where WaterGen comes in.
My main goal is that every person in the world could afford to use our machines and have the best drinking water.
WaterGen co-CEO Michael Rootman explains how WaterGen works.
For the last 100 years, people were using a very, very simple mechanism called the heat exchanger in order to cool air. When the air is reaching a dew point temperature, the humidity is separated and you get water.
Company scientists work to reinvent the heat exchanger.
Now, with this revolutionary patented new heat exchanger, we can extract up to 5 times more water per 1 kilowatt of energy than any other technology on the market.
Their biggest machines make some 1,300 to nearly 1,600 gallons a day.
The whole idea is to place as many small machines or medium machines all around the place and to create the water when you consume it.
They have a small genie machine for the home and even machines for cars to provide running water while you drive. Already in more than 80 countries, WaterGen has also placed machines in the Gaza Strip, powered by solar panels. Ambassador Eitan Naeh, head of mission in Abu Dhabi, tells CBN News what makes this partnership so strategically important.
What we see around WaterGen is that it defines the reason why the United Arab Emirates wanted to have such relationships in the first place with Israel, which is about what we can give each other, technology, and scale up.
Naeh adds why that combination leads to a strong synergy.
It's really a symbol of our relationship. We create water from the air. We create relationships. We create contacts. We create business and trade out of animosity or indifference before. Friends out of enemies. So this is what we're heading for, hopefully.
Miri Lashvili says a key part of the decision is that the UAE didn't choose WaterGen just because it's Israeli.
They tested a lot of companies and compared, and they realized that we had an edge over everyone else. They told us, no one can even compete with you.
He says that's led to a stronger partnership with very good people.
When one has good and serious intentions, the Almighty always lends his help.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
So ahead, technology shaping the future and delivering pizzas. See one restaurant's high-tech customer service solution.
Finally tonight, as the economy bounces back and jobs become more readily available, some sectors are facing a new problem that's finding workers to fill all those positions.
That's right. A Maryland pizza shop is turning to technology to help them solve their problem. Meet Servi, the robot waiter.
Please take your food.
It's got 3 levels.
Servi is a phototype device that delivers food straight to tables. The robot took a few weeks to memorize the pizza shop's floor plan and the table numbers, and then it was put to work helping human servers during busy hours. Servi is a big hit, we're told, with customers.
Talk about smart devices.
No kidding. Go Servi. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
See you again next time.